1942. And incidentally, this country owes the Marines a tremendous debt of gratitude for what they did to our country on Guadalcanal with what they did. They didn't have anything. But they saved thousands of lives in months and months of combat, because had they Japs taken Guadalcanal, they would practically seal off New Zealand, New Caledonia, and Australia. So that's how it's come out with that. On at about 0600, 15 August 1943, we were standing off Mariveles Beach on a little island called Vela, Solomon Islands. We're waiting a signal to go ashore. And so we're in the landing craft getting ready to go. We got the signal. And Coxswain pulled the throttle open, and here we go. Everything's fine so far. But he got it home on a coral reef and couldn't get it off. We're about 200, maybe 300 yards offshore. He couldn't get it off. He rocked it and rocked it. He couldn't get it off. So he dropped it around, told the lieutenant, said, "You go out to hitchhike as far as I can go." The lieutenant didn't miss a beat. He says, "We'll go." He says, "Follow me on. Stay together, and I'll meet you on the beach." So we did. And it was tough going across the coral reef. Sometimes the water up to your knees, sometimes up to your neck, sometimes over your head. But we managed to stay together, and when one guy get in trouble, the rest of us would pull him out. We made it across the reef and into the surf on the other side. And all this time, we know that Jap Air Force is going to be on us at any time. We don't know how long it's going to take them, but they're going to be there. We got up on the beach, and we hear some engines, Jap plane engines. We started running, trying to get into the jungle. There's a coconut log about halfway between the beach and the jungle. I figured I never would make it to the jungle, but I might get behind that coconut log. So I ran and dived behind it. Me and 3 or 4 other fellows. The 3 Jap planes were scraping. And their bullets came so close, it kicked dirt over all of us. But when they got by, we jumped up and run into the jungle, threw up a perimeter and dug in for the night. And at first light the next morning, we started moving north. Our objective was a place, a neat little cove called Lamba. So we started out the next morning, didn't make it again. They drove us back. 3 days we tried, and finally on the afternoon of the 3rd day, we got across it and took the village. And when we moved through it, we counted 42 tanks that we had destroyed with artillery, bazookas, and flamethrowers, and grenades, and what have you. And 900 and some odd dead Japs in the village. And I don't remember how many men we lost. We lost 300, I guess. But anyway, we went on through and went to Highway 5, turned left, headed up the island, and our primary objective, final objective, was a pass called the Lee Pass. It separated the Sierra Madre Redoubt, the Sierra Madre Mountains. It separated the island into 2 parts, and we had to have the pass to get over into the northern part of the island. And so that's what we were trying to do, was trying to take the pass. There again, we have firefights every day and night and what have you. We finally pulled my company back and put us on 2 hills off of a river, Putland River. 2 missions, one to protect the Putland River Bridge, and the other one was to protect the right flank of the regiment. We stayed there about 2 weeks, and the Japs tried to knock us off. They hit us every day and at night, tried to knock us off, but we were a little better than they were. We wouldn't move. We stayed there, and incidentally, the Army gave us the President's unit citation for the action that we had. But, when I come on back home then, I'll give you a little story to go along with this too. At Christmas, we are goodbye down in Depot on November the 11th. She says, "I'll wait for you." And so I believed that she would. She did. December the 19th, I came back to Thompson, and I got back and went to her house. She was still waiting. We got married and have been together ever since. And that's something I really like to brag about there. As Mr. Maverick says, this country is a long shot from being perfect, but it's the best there is on the face of this earth. And I love this country, and I don't care who knows I love this country. And it's a blessing to me, and I'm thankful that I had the strength and intestinal fortitude to fight for her when she needed me. And my prayer now United States of America.
That's good.
Love listening to that.
I love how he sums it up. So,
How does that feel, listening back to that?
How do I feel? You know, when I hear it, and am I being recorded? You're just thinking
I'm recording the
They
other
are
end.
being recorded.
Okay.
Yes.
You know, I get choked up because it's my dad and he's gone,
Mhm.
because I hear he was. But, you know, growing up, he never talked. He did not talk about his time at war with my brother. Now, he did with grandchildren,
Mhm.
but I wasn't allowed.
Mhm.
I had to go outside. Why? I don't know. But Daddy was very patriotic. Mama was very patriotic.
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am. You know, regardless of what we were doing in the house, ball game would come on, they play the national anthem. The house got quiet. It didn't matter what you were doing. And Mama was the same way. And, you know, if Daddy was sitting in his chair, when they got ready for the national anthem, Daddy stood up. And everybody else better get off the britches too.
Mhm.
Like I said, he didn't talk about the war to Don and I.
Mhm.
He did to the grandchildren, all of them. My children, Don's children. But there was a friend of his that lived on East Lee Street named Nolan Presley.
Mhm.
And he talked a lot to Nolan. Daddy would either go to his house and sit on the porch, and us as kids, we'd come up on the porch, and, you know, we were told right quick, look, we're talking, and we need this time to ourselves.
Mhm.
You boys can play. And the same thing, if Nolan walked up to the house and sat in the swing, we had to go find somewhere else to play, because they were talking.
Well, Nolan was in World War II as well. We have a picture of him over there.
I've got a picture of both of them
Really?
together.
Oh, that would be great.
I think it's on my phone. So, you know, I'm gonna tell this, 'cause I thought about it this morning. I was probably in the 8th grade. And I don't know what happened. I don't know what brought this up. But you know, in grammar school, we read a Bible verse every morning,
Mhm.
and somebody had prayer. And then we said the Pledge of Allegiance.
Mhm.
And at some point in time, I came home one afternoon, and there was something on the TV. And Daddy said, I want to hear you say the Pledge of Allegiance. And I messed up. And I had to go to my room and write it,
Yeah.
and write it, and memorize it. And I could not go outside and play with my buddies until I said it word for word. And it wasn't just saying it, it had to come from in here.
No.
And he said, don't you ever forget it.
You're out in that.
And I haven't.
Right.
I
Yeah.
haven't. You know, so,
Yeah. He said he loves his country. He meant it.
He
He
did.
really meant it.
you know, I learned 3 things about my daddy, even at the young age. He loved the United States of America. He loved my mom. And he loved God.
Mhm.
And he let it be known.
And that he hit all of those points in there. He really did. I just thought that was so sweet. I've heard him talk, I think a couple of recordings talk about your mom and how she waited for him, and I just love that. Yeah.
So how old was he when he went over to the war?
Oh gosh, I don't know. He was young. He was probably right out of high school. think he was born in 29, but don't hold me to that. But,
And so, and remind me, when he went to work back in the mills when he came back.
right, when Daddy came out of the war, and I should have brought it, but I was going through some stuff the other day, and I found this little pocket. It's kind of like a billfold, but it's not as big as a billfold. It's not even as big as my phone. And it was folded over, and it was old leather and worn, and I picked it up. It was in a box. Look, there's still some stuff that I have not gone through that belonged to my mom and my daddy.
Mm-hmm.
And I just haven't. That's all I say. So I picked this thing up and I set it on the nightstand, and I said, I'll come back and look at that later. So a couple of days later, I picked it up and I opened it. And it was when he had got out of service, it was the mortgage note and down payment on our home place on Allen Street. And he bought it from his mom and daddy. And what he was paying on, And also that was, he bought the land next to my grandmother. So we lived, next door. It was, I was raised here, and knowing that in his heart, the whole time he was fighting, was to stay alive, fight for his country, and get home to the love of his life and to his mom. And to see those things, I mean, even in there was a promissory note, handwritten, where he loaned his mama money to buy her car and her payments. So, going to fight, coming back, and building here, and us staying here. I mean, I think it meant a lot to my brother.
Absolutely. And,
He went to work in the mill. There was really three things that he was very involved in. The mill meant a lot to everybody, because that was our livelihood.
absolutely.
Daddy worked a half a day on weekends, on Saturday, every chance he could, and he put that money aside. All I know is he put it aside. I don't know if it went in a sock, I don't know if it went to the bank, I don't know. But that was his savings. So when the mill shut down the week of the 4th, we could go to Panama City Beach, Florida. And he was involved. He was a volunteer fireman for the city, and he did that from right after he got out of the war until around the end of 1966. And he'd take me with him. I guess that's why I'm a fireman right there. Old Molly, but he after about the beginning of 1967, the mill, there was a lot of opportunities for overtime. And so he had to give up this volunteer because he couldn't he said, I'm either in it for all or I'm not, and I can't devote my time to it. So he resigned as a volunteer fireman. The other thing was he was very involved in his church, which was right here. I grew up in Grace Primitive Baptist Church.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Okay.
My grandmother was a charter member. His
Oh,
mom.
wow, okay.
So we grew up in that church, and we were faithful to that church.
Okay, I didn't know that. Yeah. Which mill did he work in?
He worked in the bleachery.
In the okay, okay.
He was, as long as I can remember, I remember, and I'm looking at that picture of the bleachery. I knew the watchman very well, Ben Hillmore. And when I got old enough to drive, excuse me, I would go to the mill. And Mr. Ben Hill waved at me. I just walked right on. And I knew exactly where I needed to go, what elevator. And elevators back then made out of wood. Old rickety. I knew exactly what elevator to take, which floor to go to, and exactly how to get to his workplace. And he was in the piece goods. And I was looking the other day, he used a special ruler, a special pair of scissors, and a special pencil. I've got all for him.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And that, that's what he used, So, the meal was our livelihood.
Yeah, I think it
Can I
was.
have some more?
Absolutely,
Something,
yeah. We
yeah.
have some lemonade. I'm so sorry. We got
Lemonade.
water,
I'd like to
lemonade.
have some lemonade.
Yeah,
Oh gosh, I got
that's what it's
four.
there for.
Yeah, let me get you some.
I see the spout there.
And, tell me, especially because of how patriotic your dad was,
Thank you.
what do you think, whether what you want to share or what you think he would want to share of the importance of what the future generations need to know about this war and why it was fought?
When you look back at World War II, it was about our freedom. It was not just about our freedom, but it was about the freedom in Europe and other countries. Hitler wanted to be a superior. He wanted to rule the world, and he wanted to force communism on everybody. And growing up, there was some things that we learned in school about our history and about communism, about World War II. And he never talked about his time in the war, but there were times he talked about the importance of our freedom and people like Hitler. And the 6 million Jews that were killed and things like that. So the thing is and I wanted to serve this country in the military. But I had to make a decision, and I'll always live on that decision. When my brother Don was in Vietnam, I lost my mama for 4 years. She almost grieved herself.
That's right.
The pain, the antagonism, the not knowing where he was at, and I didn't want to put my mama back through that. So I chose the fire service and chose to stay here and serve my country at home. So, it's very important. The people today need to realize the importance of it. My son, my oldest son, was in the Marines. He's been overseas 3 times, was shot, received a minor injury. My daughter served in the U.S. Army. So we're still carrying on that military background. My grandfather on my mama's side, well, it was her stepdaddy, my step-grandfather. He served both World War II and World War I and World War II. So it's very important that we, especially in this generation of millennials, need to be educated on the importance of being in the military and being patriotic and serving this nation. Otherwise, we're going to end up in a bad situation. Our freedom will be lost.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. Is there anything else you want to share?
Well, yeah, and I brought 2 things. This sits on my, I have a fire truck collection and fire memorabilia collection. And I have a cuckoo clock on one side that works, and I have a Big Ben clock that sits in the middle. And this sits in the middle. I don't know where it came from. But anyway, I see it every day,
Mhm.
and it's a reminder.
Right.
Second thing is, this stack right here are the letters that my daddy wrote home to my mom.
You've
And-
talked about those.
And I've never read them,
Mhm.
because I remember Daddy telling me one time, I asked Daddy, I said, Daddy, what are these? They were still in his house. He told me to get something out of the drawer. He was sick. He was on his way to meet his Lord in a couple of weeks. And I said, Daddy, what is this? Why don't you throw this mess out? Shouldn't have said that. He let me know right quick, those were letters that he wrote to Mama while he was in service.
Mhm.
And he said, one day, when I'm gone, when you have time to be by yourself, I want you to sit down and read.
Mhm.
That time has not come,
Mhm.
but I have made my mind up. Talked to my niece yesterday. She's the oldest grandchild of Daddy. And I made my mind up yesterday. We're going camping next weekend,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna sit down and start reading. And when I get through, I'm gonna give them to my niece.
Mhm.
I talked about bringing them here, but they don't belong here.
Mhm.
They belong
Mhm.
to the granddaughter, which is my niece.
Yeah.
So
That's your
You know,
family history, though.
It is.
Yeah.
every one of them,
Mhm.
It's every place of.
every one of them is addressed Staff Sergeant B.F. Sanders and his number.
Mhm.
Company D, 35th Infantry, APO 25 COPM, San Francisco, California, and then most of them are, and you know, there's some of them, it just says U.S. Army as the return address.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
so, you know, even though he may have been overseas, a lot of these were on a ship or on an airplane or whatever, and weren't mailed until they got back on the States, which was San Francisco or
Mhm.
wherever.
You're right.
And if they did not want a relative to know where they were,
Mhm.
it just said U.S. Army as a
Right.
return address. I mean, it had his name on it,
Mhm.
it had his company, but it
Mhm.
just had U.S. Army.
Because as we know, those letters had to go through a censor, so
Yeah.
they couldn't talk about where
Yeah.
they were, oftentimes.
That's amazing.
I'm proud of my dad, and I'm proud of my brother for going to Vietnam.
Mhm.
I'm proud of my two of my three children. Chris couldn't go because he lost a kidney at 18, but we're very patriotic. I have a flag flying at my house. I have two, one on the front and one in the back. Both of them are lighted. They fly 24/7.
Mhm.
And,
That's
you know,
wonderful.
looking at a flag, and when the national anthem comes on, I feel it right here.
Mhm. Right.
Satoma, we say Pledge of Allegiance. And,
Mhm.
you know, I'm thinking, you know, my daddy, my brother, my children fought for freedom of this country,
Mhm.
and I think it will.
Mhm.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Mhm. I'm glad he instilled that.
It's on to some wonderful things. I mean,
Mhm.
I don't have much I don't have much I can say. I mean,
I
that,
know.
it really is
He's-
amazing.
Mhm. He was one of my favorites to listen to. I think he was one of the first that I said, oh, I know I want to include that in the,
You know,
in the recording.
I remember when Neil, y'all know Neil Sanders.
Uh-huh.
Well, that's my nephew.
Okay.
Mhm.
And Neil was young.
Mhm.
He wasn't in high school. He was probably in what we call middle school now, or younger. And Daddy and I and Neil were going down to Montezuma to get strawberries, and then gonna eat at the Montezuma Mennonite Cafe restaurant. And I'm driving, and Neil's sitting in the back seat, Daddy's sitting on the back. And he turned around and he said, Neil, you don't ever say anything, you're too quiet. Neil just smiled. And he said, well, you know, one day, Neil, I'm gonna talk your head off, because I've got a lot of things to tell you about my wife. And I remember saying, well, I wanna hear stuff, and he said, no, you don't.
Yeah.
And that was in the conversation. And I knew my daddy well enough that when he said something, God's not saying anything else in the conversation.
Right.
You know, Daddy's kinda like, Daddy was kinda like God. I love God, but also,
You ain't gonna question it.
you know,
Right.
I'm also afraid of his wrath too.
Uh-huh.
I love my daddy, but I knew what his wrath was, so. All right,
Well.
Trip's gotta go.
Let me, get your